everybody.
Hey everyone, how you doing?
This vlog is a little late, but it's going to be on the right day. And that's good enough for us.
Not late at all. It comes when we say it comes.
Okay. So yeah, we have a few questions today. It's going to be a standard, we got some questions this week vlog.
Because someone complained that last week's vlog was some sort of abortive fetus, I wanted to do the exact same thing this week.
Right, but
that was unfair.
Exactly. So we're going to answer some questions because you guys sent them in to us, and we're actually almost caught up on questions. I'm pretty proud of us. So we're going to jump right into those. Our first question is long and a little confusing, so pardon us if we don't quite know what you're talking about. It says, do you think that Scion can be used as a fantasy romantic comedy but still stay true to the myths? Would a setting that resembles an episode of Bewitched, or would it look more like a fish out of water romantic comedy? Well, you can do anything you want to in the setting, pretty much.
Yeah, I don't know of any good role-playing games that really work on a romantic comedy kind of thing. You can definitely have parts of that going on.
I mean, the story.
I don't know about episode of Bewitched. It's not really a good romantic comedy either. Maybe something like Sleepless in Seattle, around that kind of thing can be happening, but usually it's more of a B plot to the thing, just because unless you're with only one or two characters the entire time, a romantic comedy doesn't really work. A romantic comedy is based on the idea that one, maybe two characters are the center characters, and everybody else is either friends or so you really would have to make it so that the story was all about one or two characters.
Or everybody's having a romance at the same time. But you still have a lot of people then sitting around wondering when their turn is going to be. And you can do anything you want in the setting. If you write a story that is basically a divine romantic comedy, then that will happen. It's something that, happens now and then. We've had stuff kind of like that sometimes within a story.
Yeah, it's always parts of a story.
There have been romantic comedy-esque shenanigans for some of the divine couples in our games. Usually a PC and whoever the PC is attached to. And players will usually do that themselves too, because that's very much soft role play. It's driven by the players. There's really not a lot for a storyteller to do with that either. Unless the storyteller is standing by with some ridiculous situation that's going to happen. Okay, go, romantic comedy.
Right.
There's not a lot for a storyteller to do there.
You can't force it, because that's not going to work at all. When you start being you start falling for this person, and then they're spending all these powers. Oh, they gendered love you. Then it's not romantic comedy anymore, because... Yeah,
I mean, you can play any kind of game you want.
Also,
you write
just
that story
nailing comedy is just really hard to do.
It's true.
Constantly in a role-playing environment. Yeah.
We're actually doing a little bit of that right now. I would say in our low demigod game, Paul Bunyan is currently an NPC who is romancing one of the PCs. And because he's kind of a big derp, it is sort of like a romantic comedy watching it happen. But it's also not the major part of the story at all. It's something that kind of happens as asides, while they're traveling or when they're on downtime. And that sort of thing, happens all the time. If your players are interested in romance, they're going to do romance, and if it's funny, it'll be funny.
Yeah. So
I feel like I don't understand what this question is asking.
I think we're answering it. We're answering the question he asked. The other thing was, does it fit with mythology? And we don't hear a lot of what modern romantic comedy would be considered in mythology, but there is a little bit of there's romance going on sometimes, and sometimes it ends up being funny. So I think it can fit. I can't envision it being the main plot of a story, just because something like that can't be forced, and too many people will be sitting around being bored. But I don't think it's antagonistic to any to the story for any reason.
And the usual romantic comedy formula, which is two people meet, they don't get along, then they fall in love, then there's some crisis, and they kind of tears them apart, and then they make up at the end. That happens all the time in mythology. So, if you're just looking for following that formula, go for it. It happens all the time. The story of Eros and Psyche is a great example. Not particularly hilarious, except when she's hanging out with Pan, but pretty much the same basic story arc. That stuff happens all the time. Because modern romantic comedies are based on ancient stories, just like most of our stories are.
We have answered this question.
We have. Okay, moving on. Next question. What stops someone who has the way from using it outside of Titanrealm to create a path directly to the Avatar?
What? Nothing.
Nothing. It's just probably dangerous and a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, then that guy's kind of out of it for the whole combat.
Yeah. If he's busy being the way right now, he can't do anything else. Yeah. So that's one guy who's completely out of dealing with whatever Titan Avatar he's going after.
You could probably just Rainbow Bridge there.
Yeah, it's actually probably just cheaper and safer to go there with your Psychopomp powers than using the way. Unless there's some reason that you absolutely can't get in there. It's a Titan Avatar that has super guardians you can't teleport in.
Right.
It's probably better to just use your powers. There's more of a chance you might get hit, but it's kind of worth it for everybody to take 10 ag, but to have one more god on deck when you get there, And if that Titan avatar you're going after happens to have a lot of psychopomp themselves, there's a possibility that you going straight there as the way might also give them the opportunity to go out. You don't want that. You don't want them rampaging about.
Mm-hmm.
So possibly, if nothing stops you.
Totally possible. It doesn't seem like the best idea.
Yeah, it's sometimes there might be some situations where that's what you want to do. Just it's probably usually not very effective when you can do other stuff.
And we also haven't really redone Avatars and Ultimates in a way that we're happy with. So it's one of the things you can vote on in the poll. We would probably redo them a bit, but our question answer would still be
probably
appropriate.
be appropriate. Yeah.
All right. Boom. Next question.
Third question. So Adrasteia is Alison's god name.
Yep.
But who was the goddess torturing her into apotheosis? I'm guessing Nemesis, and if so, who sent her?
That's not how stories work. You get to guess, and we get to say nothing.
Those things obviously will come up more further in Alison's stories as she continues. Again, as usual with these questions, some of the things happening with Alison are involved in the plot happening with our current PCs, so we can't tell you stuff because they don't know stuff and they're not supposed to know stuff yet. And, we don't like spoiling a story.
Yeah, more importantly, you don't explain stories. You take them for how they are and get what you can from them. They don't really get explained.
I will tell you that there are a lot of clues about who that person is in the story, so you can probably figure it out. But if you don't, you can wait for next time we talk about Alison.
Yeah, or you can revel in not knowing.
Yeah. It could be all kinds of things. I've already seen 2 theories about who it is. Someone also mentioned Tisiphone, who's one of the Furies. I love watching you guys have theories about what's going on, so that's actually a lot of fun for me.
Yep.
Alrighty.
There's probably a great Neil Gaiman quote with this here.
Probably.
Where he said something appropriate.
We should go find
about
one
not knowing.
and put it in the post.
Okay, we'll find someone. We'll put it in the post. We're gonna put it on
We'll
YouTube
try.
too, because people on there complain.
Okay.
Okay.
And our last question today: do Titan avatars have PSPs?
Half and half. I think if it's mythologically appropriate, yes, and if not, no. If they're part of that culture, then yes. If they're like an ancient being that maybe isn't, probably not.
I would say most of the time they do. Like
Like, I would say Immer probably doesn't have Jotunblood because he's just a straight giant. So, like, he doesn't have those powers exactly.
But he has like, giant powers that are
inborn
similar,
versions of those. Like, he probably doesn't have to spend to grow giant for the scene.
Exactly.
He just is.
But then the Titans that oppose the Anuna, they have May. Because that's what happens in their culture. Like, the enemies and the gods all have that same sort of mastery over the elements.
And, Kronos is all the Arete.
Kronos is all the Arete. I would say the big one that I always think probably isn't happening is that most of the Yazada opponents probably don't actually have Asha. Because Asha is based so strongly on righteousness and truth, and those things are the antithesis of that. Even if they had it, they couldn't use it. So, and similarly, some of the Deva antagonists probably don't actually have Samsara, because they're opposed to that idea on a fundamental level. But then, some of the other ones, obviously some of the Irish Titans have Enoch and have Geisha of their own.
So I would say whatever your ST decides, but don't expect one way or the other. Like, let it be a surprise if a Titan does have. Don't plan for it. They either may or they may not.
In the original Scion books, Titan avatars do not have PSPs, so it is a house rule.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Because what's her face definitely does.
What's your face?
Aztec lady. It's Papalotl.
Okay.
Definitely has it.
It's Papalotl a demigod in the original books. She's not Titan. She's a demigod level Titan spawn.
Right, but...
Or not Titan spawn. She was a demigod level goddess who was seduced by some Titan spawn and became evil.
I think she's in the... I think she's in demigod book, but I think she's actually...
She's set it up.
9?
She's like Legend 7 or 8. It's lame. It's one of the many lame things that demigod does.
I'm going to check.
Alright. He's totally going to check on this. But yeah, most of the original Titan avatars don't have PSPs in the books, so if you add them, that'll be a thing that you're doing that's technically a house rule. Your players may be surprised, but Titan avatars have a lot of power, so it's not going to be outside the pale or anything. If you use any of our PDF supplements, you'll notice that the Titan avatars in those usually do have PSPs, unless it totally doesn't make sense for them to. Like Astovidad, Astovidad, who's a Deva, a Titan that opposes the Yazada, is in the new Maya Pantheon book, and he does not have Asha because he wouldn't have Asha. It doesn't make any sense. But a lot of them do in those, because we tend to assume they probably do when they're doing that stuff. John has been gone for a really long time. I don't know.
We've gone for less than a minute.
I don't know what else I can say about this. He's going to take forever. I would say go through and kind of... And also, you may have a culture where some of the Titan avatars in that culture do have PSPs and some don't. Like, some of the opposition for the Passagejet, for example, probably do have Heku. But then, does somebody like Apep actually have Heku? Maybe not. So, you kind of have to look at individuals as well. I think my general rule of thumb would be they probably do. I would assume they do. But some of them probably are exceptions that don't really do that thing. And because Titan avatars can be at different levels and generations when it comes to where they fall into relation to the Pantheon, like super old Titans, you can't see my arm because I'm off the frame, super old Titans may not have the same power sets or the same cosmic origin that Titans of younger generations do. So somebody like Itzpapalotl or Coatlicue might be very different from someone who's Titanic oriented like Malinalshachutl or Coco way down the tree. I still hear John stomping around in there. I gotta tell you guys, he's wrong. She's in there. She's definitely not God level. It's one of the many things that I really hate about her adventure. Is probably my most hated part of the Demigod book, because it is just nothing about it makes sense. She's not powerful enough. She's weirdly confined to some place and can't leave. Her Pantheon has abandoned her, even though that doesn't make any sense. She's falls in love with the Simurgh, and the Simurgh doesn't look anything like a Simurgh actually does in Persian mythology. Like, the Simurgh's always female, but the Simurgh is male. He dies and resurrects every day, which the Simurgh doesn't do. It resurrects once like every 8 bazillion years. It's a sun titan. The Simurgh in Persian mythology doesn't have anything to do with the sun, really. It's just a huge mess. It's a mess. And the Simurgh is like the last thing that's going to be a titan, because in Persian mythology it's one of the great benevolent powers of the universe. Like, it's just not happening. I don't know what was going on when that was written.
Okay, so it's Papalotl, Totally Legend 6, but she does have all of Itzel up through 5. The other Titan avatars are like half and half.
Okay. I believe you.
Half.
Like, who has... Did you see one that you remember?
Specifically, I saw that Atten did not.
Right.
Ron did not. Mami Wada had Cheval.
I wonder if that's on purpose or if that's just different writers not communicating again.
That's totally writers not communicating.
Okay, well, you guys make your decisions.
Well, your STs will make it.
Yes, or if you're not the ST, your ST will be on that. So most of the time, I would say yes if it makes sense, no if it doesn't. You know, cool. There's no hard and fast for that one. So good
rambling.
Yeah,
earlier. That was good.
Yeah, I did a good long ramble. I eventually gave in to my hate for that demigod story. That's all.
What? Any others?
I think that's it. We just had the 4 questions today.
Cool.
So.
All right. Well, we are done. Thank you for watching. We will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.